The war between the Keth Empire and the human coalition had lasted 12 long years. Millions had died on both sides. Planets had burned. Finally, when both sides were too tired to fight anymore, they signed a peace treaty. The treaty had many parts: trade agreements, border lines, prisoner exchanges. But one part was special. The Keth Empire had to send a princess to marry a human. This was meant to show trust between the two peoples. A royal marriage to bind them together. Emperor Thrain sat on his golden throne and listened to his advisors argue about which princess to send. He had 7 daughters. Each one was beautiful and powerful. Each one had political value. He did not want to waste any of them on primitive humans. His eldest son, Prince Korath, stepped forward with a cruel smile on his face. "Father," he said, "I have a suggestion. Send Valora." The room went quiet. Valora was the 3rd princess. She was 26 years old. She had purple skin like all Keth, with silver eyes that shone like stars. She was intelligent and educated, but she had one terrible flaw. Valora was infertile. Among the Keth, fertility was everything. Their species reproduced slowly and with great difficulty. A Keth woman who could not bear children was considered worthless, broken, a shame to her family. Valora had learned of her condition when she was 16. Since then, her family had treated her like a ghost. She was not invited to important events. She was not considered for any political marriages. She spent her days alone in the palace library, reading books, and trying to forget that everyone thought she was worthless. Emperor Thrain considered his son's suggestion. "The humans know nothing of our biology," Korath said. "They will not understand the insult we are giving them. We send them a barren princess, and they will think we have honored them. When they eventually learn the truth, they will feel cheated. But by then, the treaty will be signed. We lose nothing of value, and we satisfy the treaty requirements." Thrain nodded slowly. It was clever. Cruel, but clever. "And what of Valora herself?" asked one of the older advisors. Korath laughed. "What of her? She is useless here. Let her be useless among the humans instead. Perhaps they will throw her away when they discover her flaw. Perhaps they will keep her as a servant. Either way, she is no longer our problem." The Emperor made his decision. Valora would be sent to the humans. Nobody told Valora why she was chosen. Nobody explained Korath's cruel joke. They simply informed her that she would be leaving in 3 days to marry a human. She would represent the Keth Empire. She would not return. Valora accepted the news with a calm face. Inside, she felt nothing. She had stopped feeling things years ago. What did it matter where she lived? She was unwanted everywhere. She packed her few belongings, some clothes, some books, a small painting of her mother, who had died when Valora was young. She said goodbye to no one, because no one came to say goodbye. The human coalition received news of the incoming princess. They were pleased. This showed that the Keth were serious about peace. They had to choose a human for her to marry. The coalition leaders discussed many options: politicians, generals, wealthy businessmen. But in the end, they chose someone simple. They wanted to show that humans did not care about status and power. They wanted to show that any human was worthy of respect. They chose Park Do-hyun. Do-hyun was 32 years old. He was a farmer on a small colony world called New Gyeonggi. He grew rice and vegetables that fed workers on nearby space stations. He lived alone in a modest farmhouse. He had fought in the war as a young man, serving as a medic, but now he wanted only peace and quiet. When the coalition contacted him about the marriage, he was confused. "A princess?" he said. "Why me?" They explained that it was an honor. That he was chosen because he was a good man, honest and hard-working. That the marriage was political, but he should treat her with kindness and respect. Do-hyun agreed, though he did not fully understand. He had never wanted to marry. He had seen too much death in the war. He preferred the company of plants, which did not bleed or scream. But if his government asked this of him, he would do his duty. He cleaned his farmhouse. He prepared a room for his new wife. He read everything he could find about the Keth, which was not much. They were tall and purple-skinned. They lived for about 200 years. They valued strength and power. That was all he knew. On the day Valora arrived, it was raining. Cold, heavy rain that turned the dirt roads to mud. Do-hyun walked to the landing pad outside the village, holding an umbrella. He watched the Keth shuttle descend from the gray sky. The door opened. Valora stepped out. She was tall, almost 2 meters. Her skin was the color of dark plums. Her silver eyes looked around at the muddy ground, the simple buildings, the rain falling endlessly. She wore fine clothes that were already getting wet. She looked at Do-hyun. He was shorter than her, with black hair and a weathered face. His clothes were simple and worn. Mud covered his boots. He did not look like a soldier, or a politician, or a king. He looked like exactly what he was, a farmer. This was the joke, Valora realized. They had sent her to marry a peasant. Korath must be laughing right now. Back in his golden palace, she waited for Do-hyun to say something cruel, to mock her or dismiss her or show disgust at her alien appearance. Instead, he walked forward and held the umbrella over her head. "You must be cold," he said quietly. "Let's get you inside." Valora stared at him. The rain fell around them. He waited patiently, umbrella extended, keeping her dry while he got wet himself. "Come on," he said gently. He turned and started walking toward the farmhouse. After a moment, Valora followed. She did not understand this man. She did not understand why he was being kind. There had to be a trick, a trap, a hidden cruelty waiting for her. But as she walked behind him through the rain, watching his simple, unhurried steps, she felt something strange, something she had not felt in years. She felt curious. Maybe, she thought, maybe this would not be so terrible. Maybe the humans were different from what she had expected. Or maybe the cruelty would come later, as it always did. She followed him inside, and the door closed behind her, shutting out the rain and the cold and the life she had left behind. Her new life had begun. The farmhouse was small. Valora had lived her entire life in a palace with 1,000 rooms. This house had only 5 rooms, and each one was smaller than her old bathroom. The furniture was simple wood. The floors creaked when she walked. The walls were thin, and she could hear the rain hitting the roof, but it was warm. A fire burned in a small stove. The air smelled like food and earth, and something sweet she could not name. Do-hyun showed her to a room. "This is yours," he said. "I cleaned it yesterday. If you need anything different, tell me." The room had a bed, a small table, a window, looking out at the fields. Simple things. Clean things. "The bathroom is there," Do-hyun pointed. "Kitchen is here. You can eat whenever you want. Take whatever you need." Valora waited for him to explain the rules. In the palace, there were always rules. When to wake, when to eat, when to speak, when to be silent. But Do-hyun just stood there, looking slightly awkward. "Are you hungry?" he asked. She was. She nodded. He brought her soup in a clay bowl. It was made from vegetables she did not recognize, with soft noodles and pieces of egg. She tasted it carefully. It was good. Different from Keth food, but good. "I read that Keth can eat most human foods," Do-hyun said. "But if something makes you sick, tell me. I will learn what you need." She ate in silence. He did not watch her or ask questions. He simply sat nearby, drinking tea, looking out the window at the rain. When she finished, he took her bowl and washed it himself. There were no servants. She realized he did everything alone. "You should rest," he said. "The trip was long. She went to her room. The bed was soft. The blankets were warm. She lay down, expecting to stay awake all night, listening for danger. Instead, she fell asleep almost immediately. She slept for 12 hours. It was the longest she had slept in years. Days passed. Then weeks. Do-hyun never demanded anything from her. He woke early each morning and worked in the fields. He came back for lunch, made food, ate quietly, then returned to work. In the evenings, he read books or repaired tools. He spoke to her when she wanted to talk. He left her alone when she did not. Valora did not understand. Where was the cruelty? Where was the trap? She began to watch him work. The farm was large, and he managed it alone. He grew rice in flooded fields, vegetables in long rows, fruit trees along the edges. It was hard work, and he was often tired at the end of the day. One morning, she walked outside and stood at the edge of the field. "Can I help?" she asked. Do-hyun looked surprised. "You want to help? I have nothing else to do." He considered this, then nodded. He showed her how to pull weeds, how to check the water levels in the rice fields, how to spot insects that damaged the plants. Valora learned quickly. Her Keth body was stronger than a human's, and she could lift things Do-hyun struggled with. She could work longer without getting tired. He never thanked her with big words. He simply nodded, or smiled slightly, or said, "Good work," in his quiet voice. But she could tell he was grateful. Their neighbor, Kim Yuna, visited often. She was an old woman, nearly 70 years old, with white hair and sharp eyes. She had been a doctor during the war, treating soldiers on hospital ships. Now she lived alone in a small house nearby, growing flowers and complaining about her knees. Yuna was not shy about anything. "So, you are the alien princess," she said, studying Valora with obvious curiosity. "You are taller than I expected, and more purple." Valora did not know how to respond. But Yuna just laughed. "Come, come. I will teach you to make kimchi. Every wife should know how to make kimchi, even purple ones." Valora found herself spending afternoons with Yuna, learning to prepare human food. The old woman talked constantly, telling stories about the war, about her late husband, about the colony's history. She treated Valora not as a princess or an alien, but as a young woman who needed guidance. "Do-hyun is a good man," Yuna said one day, chopping cabbage with practiced hands. "Quiet, but good. He saw terrible things in the war. It changed him, but he has a kind heart." "Why is he not married?" Valora asked. Yuna sighed. "He was, once, a long time ago. She died in the war, a bomb on a civilian transport. He never recovered. He came here to be alone, to grow things, instead of losing them." Valora felt something move in her chest. Sadness, perhaps. Understanding. That night, she looked at Do-hyun differently. He was reading a book by lamplight, his face tired but peaceful. He had lost someone he loved. He had been broken by war, but he had not become cruel or bitter. He had simply become quiet. She wanted to say something, to tell him she understood loss, to tell him she was sorry, but she did not have the words, so she said nothing. Weeks turned to months. Valora sent reports back to the Empire, as required. She kept them short and empty. "The human is simple. The conditions are primitive. I am being treated acceptably." She did not mention that she was eating well. She did not mention that she had started laughing at Yuna's jokes. She did not mention that she had slept through every night without nightmares for the first time in her adult life. One day, she broke a piece of farming equipment. It was an accident. The machine was delicate, and she pressed too hard. It shattered in her hands. She stared at the pieces, her heart pounding. This machine had cost money. A lot of money. Do-hyun worked hard for every credit he earned. She had destroyed months of his savings in one careless moment. She waited for his anger, for shouting, or cold silence, or punishment. Do-hyun looked at the broken machine. He looked at her face, saw the fear there. "It's just a thing," he said quietly. "Things can be replaced." He picked up the pieces and put them aside. Then he went back to work, as if nothing had happened. Valora stood frozen. In her entire life, no one had ever responded to her mistakes with such simple forgiveness. In the palace, every error was remembered, used against her. Proof that she was as worthless as her barren body. But this man, this quiet farmer, simply accepted the loss and moved on. That night, alone in her room, Valora felt something wet on her face. She touched her cheek in confusion. Keth did not cry. Their bodies did not produce tears, but her eyes were burning, and her throat was tight, and something inside her had cracked open like an egg. She did not understand these humans. She did not understand this man, but she was beginning to think that maybe, just maybe, she had been wrong about everything. Maybe kindness was not a weakness. Maybe she was not worthless. Maybe, after all these years, she had finally found a place where she could belong. 2 months had passed since Valora arrived on New Gyeonggi. The rain season had ended, and now the sun shone warm on the fields. The rice was growing tall and green. The fruit trees were heavy with blossoms. Valora worked beside Do-hyun every day now. Her hands, which had once been soft and delicate, were becoming rough from labor. Her fine palace clothes had been replaced by simple farm clothes that Yuna had given her. She no longer looked like a princess. She felt more real than she had ever felt in her life. But there was something she had not told Do-hyun. A secret that sat heavy in her chest like a stone. He had been so kind to her. He deserved to know the truth. One evening, after dinner, they sat on the porch of the farmhouse. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Insects sang in the fields. It was peaceful. Valora took a deep breath. "I need to tell you something," she said. Do-hyun looked at her and waited. He never rushed her. He never pushed. "Do you know why I was sent here?" she asked. He shook his head. "They said it was for the peace treaty. A symbol of trust between our peoples. That is not the full truth." Valora looked down at her hands. "My brother chose me for a reason. He wanted to insult the humans. He wanted to give you something worthless." Do-hyun frowned slightly. "I do not understand. I am infertile," Valora said. The words hurt to speak. Even now. "I cannot have children. Among my people, this makes me worthless. I have no value. No purpose. My family has treated me like a ghost for 10 years because of this." She forced herself to continue. "My brother thought it would be a cruel joke. Send the broken princess to the primitive humans. Let them figure out that they received damaged goods. He expected you to reject me or treat me badly when you learned the truth." She finally looked up at Do-hyun's face, expecting to see disappointment or anger or disgust. Instead, she saw something she did not expect. She saw pain. Pain for her. "Valora," he said softly. Her name sounded different in his voice. Gentler. "How old were you when you found out?" 16. "And your family abandoned you? For something you could not control?" She nodded. Do-hyun was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was steady. "My mother could not have children either," he said. "She tried for many years. It broke her heart. In the end, she and my father adopted me from an orphanage. I was 3 years old and very sick. Nobody else wanted me." He looked at Valora with gentle eyes. "My mother raised me with more love than I can describe. She taught me to read. She taught me to cook. She held me when I had nightmares. She was the best mother anyone could ask for." He reached out and took Valora's hand. It was the first time he had touched her, since the day she arrived. "I do not care that you cannot have children," he said. "I never wanted children anyway. I have seen too much death. I do not want to bring new life into a universe that can be so cruel." Valora stared at him. "You are not disappointed? Why would I be disappointed? You are here. You are real. You help me on the farm. You make Yuna laugh. You work harder than anyone I know." He squeezed her hand gently. "Juan, those things matter. The other thing does not." She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Her whole life, she had been defined by her flaw. Every interaction, every relationship, had been colored by what she could not do. And now this man, this quiet farmer, was telling her it did not matter. She did not know how to feel. She did not know how to exist in a world where her worth was not determined by her body's failures. "My brother sent me here as a punishment," she finally said. "He thought I would suffer. And are you suffering?" She considered the question honestly. She thought about the peaceful mornings, the hard work, the warm food, the sound of rain on the roof. She thought about Yuna's laughter and Do-hyun's quiet kindness. "No," she admitted. "I am not suffering. I think I am happier here than I have ever been in my life." The door behind them burst open. Yuna stood there, not even pretending she had not been listening. "Finally," she said loudly. "I was wondering when you would tell him. I figured it out weeks ago, but I was waiting for you to speak." Valora was startled. "You knew? I am a doctor. I notice things." Yuna walked onto the porch and sat down heavily. "Also, I read the reports about Keth biology. Your government's medical databases are not as secret as they think." She looked at Valora with warm, fierce eyes. "Listen to me carefully, child. I have decided that you are my granddaughter now. I never had children of my own, and Do-hyun here is basically my adopted son. So the math works out. You are family now. And family does not abandon each other over things like this." Valora felt that strange burning in her eyes again. "You cannot just decide that. I am 70 years old. I can decide whatever I want." Yuna sniffed. "If your alien emperor has a problem with it, he can come talk to me himself. I will hit him with my cooking spoon." Despite everything, Valora laughed. It was a real laugh. Deep and surprised, coming from somewhere she had forgotten existed. Do-hyun smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible. But Valora saw it. She felt something shift between them. Something important. "So," Yuna said, standing up. "Now that we have finished with the emotional nonsense, who wants tea? I brought those little rice cakes you like." "Valora. The ones with the red bean paste." They went inside together. The three of them sat around the small kitchen table, drinking tea and eating rice cakes. Outside, the sun finished setting, and the stars came out one by one. Valora looked at these two humans. An old woman who had claimed her as family. A quiet man who had accepted her without judgment. They were simple people. Living simple. They had no power, no wealth, no political importance. But they had something her own family had never given her. They had love. She did not say the word out loud. It was too soon, too fragile. But she felt it growing inside her, like a seed in spring soil. For the first time in 10 years, Valora allowed herself to hope. Maybe she was not worthless after all. Maybe she had simply been looking for worth in the wrong place. Maybe she had finally found where she belonged. A year passed on New Gyeonggi. The colony had grown used to their alien resident. At first, people stared at Valora when she came to the village market. They whispered behind their hands. Children pointed at her purple skin and silver eyes. But Valora kept coming. She helped carry heavy loads for elderly shopkeepers. She learned the names of every family. She played with the children, letting them touch her strange hair and ask her endless questions about space and stars and her home planet. Slowly, the whispers stopped. The staring ended. Valora became just another member of the community. She was Do-hyun's wife, Yuna's granddaughter, the tall purple woman who made excellent kimchi and could carry a full harvest basket on each shoulder without breaking a sweat. Her relationship with Do-hyun had deepened, though it was not like the romances in stories. There were no grand declarations of love, no dramatic moments of passion. Instead, there were small things, quiet things. He taught her to fish in the lake behind the farm. She taught him Keth meditation techniques that helped him sleep without nightmares. They read books together in the evenings, sometimes discussing them, sometimes just enjoying the silence together. They began sharing a room without ever discussing it. One night, Valora simply did not go to her own bed, and Do-hyun made space for her without a word. They lay side by side in the darkness, not touching at first, then gradually becoming comfortable with each other's presence. It was not passionate. It was something deeper. It was two broken people, finding peace in each other's company. Valora also began studying human medicine with Yuna's help. She had always been intelligent, and the palace had given her an excellent education. But Keth medicine focused only on Keth biology. Human medicine was different. It was creative, desperate. Humans died so easily and fought so hard against death. Their doctors tried things that Keth doctors would consider insane. Experimental treatments, radical surgeries, gene therapies that rewrote the basic code of life. Humans refused to accept limitations. When told something was impossible, they found ways to make it possible. One day, Valora was helping Yuna research treatments for a neighbor's daughter. The young woman wanted children, but had difficulty conceiving. They were looking for options that might help her. Valora read through medical journals, study reports, clinical trials. She read about gene therapies that could repair damaged reproductive systems. She read about techniques that could activate dormant cells, restore functions that had been lost. And then she stopped. Her hands trembled as she read a particular study. It was experimental, still in early stages, but the results were promising. Human scientists had found ways to repair certain types of infertility that had been considered permanent. The conditions they described were very similar to her own. "Yuna," she said, her voice strange. "Look at this." The old woman read the study. Her eyes grew wide. "This is about humans," she said carefully. Different, but not completely different. Valora's mind was racing. The basic principles are the same. The technique could be adapted. It would need modification, but theoretically, it might work. Yuna stared at her. "Are you saying what I think you are saying?" Valora nodded slowly. "I think humans might have found a way to fix what my people said could never be fixed." They spent weeks researching. Valora sent careful messages to human medical researchers, hiding her true identity. She simply presented the question as a theoretical problem. If someone had this specific type of infertility, with these specific biological characteristics, could the treatment be adapted? The responses amazed her. Human doctors were not suspicious or dismissive. They were excited. A new puzzle. A new challenge. Several researchers offered to work on the problem for free, simply because it was interesting. "This is what humans do," Yuna explained. "We solve problems. We refuse to accept that anything is truly impossible. It is our greatest strength, and sometimes our greatest weakness." 6 months later, the treatment was ready. It was experimental, risky. There was only a small chance it would work. But Valora did not care about the risk. Yuna performed the procedure herself, with guidance from the researchers who had developed it. Do-hyun waited outside, pacing back and forth, more nervous than Valora had ever seen him. The procedure took 3 hours. When it was finished, Valora rested for 2 days. Then, they waited. 2 months later, Yuna ran the tests. She came out of her medical room with tears in her eyes. "It worked," she whispered. "Valora, it worked. You are no longer infertile." Valora sat very still. The words did not seem real. For 10 years, she had been defined by her flaw. For 10 years, she had been told she was broken beyond repair. And now, in a small farmhouse, on a remote human colony, an elderly doctor had just told her that humans had fixed what her own people had deemed unfixable. Do-hyun came to her side. He took her hand. "How do you feel?" "I do not know," she admitted. "That is okay," he said. That evening, they sat together on their porch, watching the sunset as they had done 100 times before. "This changes things," Valora said quietly. "Does it? Among my people, fertility is everything. If the Empire learns I am no longer barren, they may want me back. I could have political value again. I could be used for alliances, for marriage contracts, for producing heirs." Do-hyun was quiet for a moment. "Is that what you want?" She turned to look at him. This simple man, with his weathered hands and gentle eyes. This farmer, who had accepted her when she was worthless. Who had never asked anything of her except her company. "No," she said firmly. "I want to stay here. With you, with Yuna, with our neighbors, and our farm, and our life." "Then stay," he said simply. "The Empire may not give me a choice. Then we will make them give you a choice." He squeezed her hand. "You are not alone anymore, Valora. Whatever comes, we face it together." She leaned against him, feeling his warmth, feeling the solid reality of his presence. Somewhere in the galaxy, her brother was probably laughing about his successful joke. Her father had probably forgotten she existed. Her people had written her off as worthless trash, sent to die among primitives. They had no idea what the primitives had done. They had no idea that their cruel joke had given Valora everything she never knew she wanted. But they would learn. Sooner or later, the Empire would find out. And when they did, everything would change. Valora looked up at the stars, knowing that somewhere out there, her past was waiting to catch up with her. She was not afraid. She had something to fight for now. She had a home. Word traveled slowly across the galaxy. But it always traveled, eventually. A Keth diplomat visiting a human medical conference noticed an interesting research paper. It described a new treatment for a rare type of infertility. The biological details were strangely familiar. Too familiar. He investigated quietly. He traced the research back through layers of anonymous communications. And, eventually, he found the truth. Princess Valora, the barren disgrace of the imperial family, was no longer barren. Human doctors had fixed her. The news reached Prince Korath in his golden palace. He read the report 3 times, his face growing darker with each reading. This was not possible. The Keth had the most advanced medical technology in the known galaxy. Their doctors had examined Valora for years. They had declared her condition permanent and untreatable. And yet, primitive humans, living on a mud-covered farming planet, had done what the Keth Empire could not. Korath felt something he rarely felt. Fear. If Valora could have children, she had political value. If she had children with a human, those children would have claims to the Keth throne. They would be half-breeds, of course, abominations by traditional standards. But they would exist. They would be threats. Worse, if the galaxy learned that humans had cured a condition the Keth could not cure, it would be a humiliation. It would suggest that humans were not the primitive weaklings the Keth pretended they were. Korath went to his father immediately. Emperor Thrain listened to his son's report with a cold, calculating expression. He did not share Korath's panic. Instead, he saw opportunity. "She has value now," Thrain said slowly. "Value we gave away for nothing. We must reclaim it." "How?" "We send an envoy. We remind her of her duty to the Empire. We bring her home, cure or no cure, and we use her properly this time. Perhaps marry her to Duke Vorn or Prince Selthar of the Eastern Systems. Her fertility, combined with her connection to humanity, makes her extremely valuable. Korath shook his head. She may refuse. She has been living among humans for over a year. She may have been corrupted by their influence. Then we do not give her a choice. Thrain's eyes were cold. Send Captain Rin with a full military escort. Make it clear that this is not a request. She is Imperial property. She will return, or there will be consequences. Captain Rin was a loyal officer, or so everyone believed. He had served the Empire faithfully for 30 years. He had led soldiers in the war against humanity. He was the perfect choice for a sensitive retrieval mission. What nobody knew was that Rin had always admired Princess Valora from afar. He had watched her grow up alone in the palace, ignored and mistreated by her family. He had seen her kindness to servants and soldiers. Her intelligence wasted on a family that saw her as worthless. He had always thought she deserved better. When he received his orders, he felt sick, but he was a soldier. He followed commands. He gathered 50 of his best troops and prepared the diplomatic shuttle for the journey to human space. On New Gyeonggi, Valora knew nothing of this. She was busy with the harvest, working beside Do-hyun in the fields, laughing at something Yuna had said earlier that morning. Life had never been better. She had been thinking about the future lately. Real thinking. The kind she had never allowed herself before. She wondered what it would be like to have a child, to raise someone with Do-hyun's kindness and her determination, to give a child the love she had never received from her own family. She had not mentioned these thoughts to Do-hyun yet. It was too soon. They needed time to adjust to this new reality. But the possibility existed now, and she treasured it like a precious gem. Then the shuttle appeared in the sky. The whole colony noticed it. Keth ships had a distinctive design, sharp and angular, like predatory insects. This one was large, clearly military. It descended toward the main landing pad, its engines thundering. Valora felt her blood go cold. Do-hyun took her hand. "Stay calm," he said. "We do not know why they are here yet." But she knew. In her heart, she already knew. They walked to the landing pad together. Half the colony came with them, curious and concerned. Yuna followed, walking with a cane she did not really need. Her eyes sharp and alert. The shuttle landed. The door opened. 50 Keth soldiers marched out in perfect formation, their armor gleaming, their weapons visible. Behind them came Captain Rin, tall and severe in his officer's uniform. He stopped before Valora and bowed stiffly. "Princess Valora," he said formally, "I carry a message from your father, Emperor Thrain. He commands your return to the Empire. Your presence is required for matters of state." Valora's voice was steady. "What matters of state? That is not for me to say. You will be briefed upon arrival." Rin's eyes flickered toward the humans surrounding them. "Your attachment here is noted, but it does not override Imperial command. You will come with us. Now," Do-hyun stepped forward. "She is my wife. She has rights under coalition law." A Keth soldier laughed. "Human law means nothing. She is Keth. She belongs to the Empire." The tension in the air became thick and dangerous. The Keth soldiers were armed and trained for combat. The humans were farmers, shopkeepers, ordinary people with no weapons visible. But Valora saw something in their eyes. Something the Keth soldiers did not expect. These humans were not afraid. They had fought in the war. They had lost friends and family. They had rebuilt their lives on this quiet world. And now, a foreign military force was trying to take one of their own. Old Yuna pushed through the crowd. She was tiny compared to the Keth soldiers, barely reaching their chests. But she walked right up to Captain Rin and pointed her cane at him like a weapon. "Listen to me very carefully," she said, her voice cold. "That woman is my granddaughter. She is part of this community, and she is not going anywhere she does not want to go." Rin looked down at the old woman with something like confusion. "You cannot stop us." "Maybe not." Yuna smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "But you should know that I survived 3 wars. I have treated wounds you cannot imagine. I know exactly how to cause pain that will not kill." The Keth troops shifted uneasily. They had expected no resistance. They had expected the humans to bow and surrender, like the primitive weaklings they were supposed to be. Instead, they saw an old woman with eyes like steel, backed by an entire community that refused to move. Valora looked at these people. Her neighbors, her friends, her family. They had known her for barely a year, and yet they were willing to stand against armed soldiers to protect her. She felt something rise in her chest. Pride. Love. A fierce determination. She turned to Captain Rin. "I am not going back," she said clearly. "I choose to stay here. With my husband. With my family. I am no longer a prisoner of the Empire. I am a free person, and I make my own choices." Rin's expression was unreadable. "The Emperor will not accept this answer." "Then tell him to come himself," Valora said. "I will give him the same answer to his face." The confrontation balanced on a knife's edge. 50 soldiers against a peaceful colony. Violence seemed inevitable. Then Captain Rin did something unexpected. He lowered his eyes. "I understand," he said quietly. So quietly that only Valora could hear. "I have always understood." He stepped back and signaled his troops. "We will report your response to the Emperor. This matter is not concluded." The soldiers returned to their shuttle. The engines fired. The ship rose into the sky and disappeared among the clouds. Valora exhaled a breath she did not know she was holding. She felt Do-Hyun's hand still in hers, solid and real. "That was close," Yuna muttered. "I really thought I was going to have to hit someone." The crowd slowly dispersed, neighbors clapping Do-Hyun on the shoulder, giving Valora encouraging nods. They had stood together. They had not backed down, but everyone knew this was not over. The Empire would return, and next time, they might not ask politely. Prince Korath was furious. He had received Captain Rin's report with disbelief. A Keth princess had refused an imperial command. She had chosen to stay with primitive humans rather than return to her own people. And Rin had simply accepted her refusal and left. This was unacceptable. Korath contacted Rin through a private channel, bypassing his father entirely. "You failed your mission," he said coldly. "I delivered the message. She refused. Then you should have taken her by force." Rin's face on the communication screen remained calm. There were civilians present. Human coalition citizens. Using force would have created a diplomatic incident. "I do not care about diplomatic incidents. I care about recovering what belongs to the Empire." Korath leaned forward. "You will return to that planet. You will take my sister. I do not care how you do it or who you have to kill." There was a long silence. "Yes, Prince Korath," Rin finally said. "It is clear." End quote. Quote. Problem. The connection ended. Rin sat alone in his quarters aboard the shuttle. His hands were shaking. He had served the Empire his entire life. He had followed orders without question, even when those orders were cruel. But this was different. He had seen the way Valora stood with those humans. He had seen the love in their eyes when they looked at her. He had seen a woman who had finally found happiness after a lifetime of suffering, and he was being ordered to destroy that happiness for the sake of Korath's pride. For the first time in his life, Captain Rin questioned his loyalty. 1 week later, the Keth shuttle returned to New Gyeonggi. This time, it came without warning. This time, it came in the middle of the night. Valora woke to the sound of engines. She saw lights descending from the sky through her bedroom window. Beside her, Do-hyun was already awake, already moving. "Get dressed," he said quietly. They came back. The colony had prepared for this. After the first visit, they had discussed what to do if the Keth returned. They had made plans. They had gathered resources. They were farmers, yes, but many of them were veterans. They had fought in the war. They remembered how. Do-hyun opened a hidden compartment under the floor. Inside were weapons. Old, but well-maintained. Rifles he had kept from his military days. Plasma cutters that could serve as makeshift guns. Hunting equipment that could cause serious harm if needed. "Are you sure about this?" Valora asked. "They want to take you. They will not listen to words." Do-hyun loaded his rifle with practiced hands. "So, we speak the only language they will understand." Throughout the colony, lights were coming on. People were moving through the darkness, gathering at designated points. Old Kim Yuna emerged from her house carrying a weapon that looked older than she was, a heavy plasma rifle from the first war with the Keth. "I told you," she said grimly. "I survived 3 wars. Time for a 4th, I suppose." The Keth shuttle landed at the edge of the colony. 50 soldiers poured out, moving in tactical formation. They expected a quick extraction mission. Grab the princess. Eliminate any resistance. Return home. They did not expect what they found. The colonists had positioned themselves throughout the settlement. Behind buildings. In upper windows. Along the roads. They were not military professionals. But they knew this land. They knew every corner, every hiding spot, every advantage. When the first Keth patrol moved into the colony center, the ambush began. Plasma fire erupted from multiple directions. The Keth soldiers, surprised by the intensity of the attack, scrambled for cover. They returned fire, but they could not see all their enemies. The humans were everywhere and nowhere, shooting from the darkness, then vanishing before the Keth could respond. Do-hyun fought with a calm precision that surprised everyone except Yuna, who had always known he was more than a simple farmer. He moved through the battlefield like a ghost, taking down soldiers with careful, measured shots. Valora fought beside him. Her Keth training had included combat skills, though she had rarely used them. Now, she remembered every lesson. She was faster than humans, stronger than humans. She used her advantages without mercy. She did not enjoy killing. But she would not let them take her. She would not let them destroy what she had built. The fighting lasted less than an hour. When it was over, 37 Keth soldiers lay dead or wounded. The rest had retreated to their shuttle. The colonists had suffered injuries, some serious, but no deaths. Yuna was already moving among the wounded, treating human and Keth alike with equal efficiency. Captain Rin stood near the shuttle, watching the disaster unfold. He had not fired a single shot. He had simply stood back and let it happen. His second-in-command stared at him with horror. "Captain, why did you not lead the assault? Why did you not help?" "Is he in quote? To the Dunit, 2A, 2 after 1. Why did you not help?" Rin did not answer. Instead, he walked forward, away from the shuttle, toward the center of the colony, where Valora stood with her human family. The remaining Keth soldiers raised their weapons, confused. Was the captain going to negotiate? To surrender? To attack alone? Rin stopped 10 meters from Valora. He removed his officer's insignia from his uniform and dropped it on the ground. "I have served the Empire for 30 years, he said. "I have followed orders I knew were wrong because I believed in duty. But this is where I stop." "Cremant," he looked at Valora. "Your Highness, I apologize for my role in this. I should have refused from the beginning." "Oh." Valora studied the old soldier's face. She saw weariness there, regret, and something like hope. "Why now?" "Because I watched you choose love over power. Because I watched these humans stand against trained soldiers to protect someone they consider family. Because I finally understand that loyalty to evil is not true loyalty. He turned to face the remaining Keth troops. This mission is over, he announced. We return to the Empire and report failure. Anyone who wishes to continue attacking civilians is welcome to try. I will not help them. The soldiers hesitated. Then, slowly, they lowered their weapons. Without Rin's leadership, without clear orders, they had no stomach for continued fighting against an enemy that fought so fiercely. The shuttle departed, carrying its survivors back to Keth space. The colony was left in silence. Then, slowly, people began to emerge from their hiding places. They gathered in the center of the settlement, exhausted and wounded but alive. They had done the impossible. They had defeated Keth soldiers. They had defended their own. Do-hyun put his arm around Valora. She leaned into him, suddenly exhausted. It's not over, she said. The Empire will be angry. Probably. They might send more soldiers. Ships. A real invasion. They might. She looked up at him. Are you afraid? He considered the question seriously. Yes, he admitted. But I was afraid before, too. When I went to war. When my wife died. When you arrived and I did not know how to be a husband to an alien princess. He smiled slightly. I have been afraid many times. It has never stopped me from doing what needed to be done. And, Captain Rin approached them slowly, hands visible and empty. He looked uncertain, a man who had just thrown away his entire life and did not know what came next. What will you do now? Valora asked him. I do not know. I am a traitor to the Empire. I cannot go back. Valora looked at Do-hyun. He nodded slightly. Then stay here, she said. We can use someone with military experience. And I suspect you have much to teach us about how the Empire thinks. Rin stared at her. You would trust me? After I came here to capture you? You chose not to. That matters. Valora held out her hand. Welcome to New Gyeonggi, Captain. I think you will find that humans are very forgiving. He took her hand carefully. Behind them, Yuna shouted for help with the wounded. The colony began the work of rebuilding. The dead were mourned. The injured were treated. The damage was repaired. And somewhere in the galaxy, the Keth Empire received news of their humiliating defeat. A tiny human farming colony had beaten the Emperor's soldiers. The universe would never look at humanity quite the same way again. 1 year had passed since the Battle of New Gyeonggi. The human coalition had responded to the incident with firm diplomacy. They demanded explanations from the Keth Empire. They demanded apologies for the unprovoked attack on a peaceful colony. They demanded recognition of Valora's marriage and her right to live where she chose. Emperor Thrain, facing pressure from his own council and the threat of renewed war, was forced to negotiate. Prince Korath argued for military retaliation, but the council overruled him. The memory of the last war was still fresh. Nobody wanted to fight again over one princess, no matter how valuable she might be. In the end, a new treaty was signed. Valora's marriage to Do-hyun was officially recognized. She would retain her title as Princess of the Keth Empire, but she was free to live as she pleased. No further attempts would be made to force her return. It was a victory, but Valora knew that the larger battle was not over. I want to go back, she told Do-hyun one morning. Not to stay, just to visit, to face them. He looked up from his breakfast. There are things I need to say, things the Empire needs to hear. She touched her stomach gently. It was still flat, but she knew what was growing inside her. She had confirmed it with Yuna just a week ago, and I want them to know about our child. Do-hyun set down his spoon. His expression was complex, a mixture of joy and concern. When did you find out? Last week. I wanted to be sure before I told you. He stood and crossed to her side. He took her hands in his, holding them carefully. A child, he said softly. Our child. Half human, Half Keth. She smiled. The first of their kind. The Empire will not be happy. The Empire is never happy, but they will have to accept it. She squeezed his hands. Will you come with me? To Keth Prime? I do not want to face them alone. You will never be alone again, he said. I told you that a long time ago. I meant it. 3 weeks later, a human diplomatic ship arrived at the Keth homeworld. It carried Ambassador Valora and her husband Do-hyun, accompanied by Captain Rin as their advisor and Kim Yuna as their personal physician. The Empire had not seen anything like it. Valora walked through the Imperial Palace for the first time in over 2 years. The halls that had once felt like a prison now seemed small and cold. She remembered hiding in corners, trying to avoid her siblings' cruelty. She remembered eating alone while her family celebrated without her. Those memories still hurt. But they no longer controlled her. The throne room was full of nobles, officers, and officials. They had all come to see the runaway princess who had caused so much trouble. Some looked curious. Some looked hostile. Some looked afraid. Emperor Thrain sat on his golden throne, ancient and powerful. Prince Korath stood at his side, barely concealing his hatred. The other siblings were scattered throughout the room, watching with varied expressions. Valora walked the length of the throne room with her head high. Do-hyun walked beside her, wearing simple, formal clothes, looking perfectly calm. Rin followed in his new coalition uniform. Yuna brought up the rear, her cane tapping steadily on the marble floor. They stopped before the throne. Princess Valora, Emperor Thrain said. His voice was cold. You have returned. I have, father. She did not bow. Ambassadors were not required to bow to foreign rulers. I come as a representative of the human coalition, not as a subject of your empire. Korath stepped forward. You forget your place, sister. You are Keth. You belong to us. I belong to you, Valora corrected. When I was worthless. When I was barren. When you could throw me away. Like garbage. She met his eyes without fear. You sent me to the humans as a joke. You expected them to despise me or ignore me. Instead, they healed me. She held up a data chip. This contains the medical research that cured my infertility. Human doctors developed it. They worked for months, without payment. Simply because it was an interesting problem to solve. She looked around the throne room. How many Keth suffer from similar conditions? How many have been abandoned by their families, discarded as worthless? Hundreds. Thousands. The Empire ignored them because they had no value. She tossed the data chip toward her father. It clattered on the floor at the base of his throne. This is what humanity taught me, she said. That worth is not determined by what you can produce. That kindness is not weakness. That even those deemed broken deserve care. Emperor Thrain stared at the data chip. You challenge our traditions, he said finally. Our values. Yes, because your traditions are cruel. Because your values destroy innocent people. Valora placed her hand on her stomach. I am carrying a child, father. Your grandchild. Half human, half Keth. They will never know the suffering I experienced. They will grow up knowing they are loved, exactly as they are. Murmurs rippled through the throne room. A half-breed heir. This was unprecedented. This was dangerous. This was terrifying. Korath's face twisted with rage. This is an abomination. This creature cannot be allowed to exist. It threatens the purity of the imperial bloodline. Silence, Emperor Thrain commanded. His voice cut through the noise like a blade. The room went quiet. The Emperor stood from his throne. He was old, but he was still imposing. He descended the steps slowly until he stood before Valora. For a long moment, father and daughter simply looked at each other. You hate me, Thrain said quietly. I should. You treated me as worthless for 10 years. You let Korath send me away as a joke. You tried to take me back only when I became valuable again. And yet, Valora sighed. And yet, I do not hate you. I pity you. You are trapped by traditions that cause only suffering. You cannot see beyond them. That is its own kind of prison. She reached out and picked up the data chip from the floor. She held it out to him. Take this, she said. Use it to help your people. Let something good come from all this pain. Thrain looked at the chip. At his daughter. At the simple human farmer, who stood beside her without fear. What do you want? He asked. Valora smiled. And in that smile was everything. The peaceful mornings on the farm, the dinners with Yuna, the quiet moments with Do-hyun, the love she had found in the most unexpected place. I want you to understand, she said. You sent me to the humans as a cruel joke. But I returned with something you never expected. She placed her hand on her stomach again. I returned with hope. The throne room was silent. Emperor Thrain took the data chip. 5 years later, the colony on New Gyeonggi had grown beyond recognition. Human and Keth worked side by side in the fields. Medical researchers collaborated on new treatments. Children of both species played together, learning each other's languages and customs. Old Yuna, now 93 years old, ran a small school where she taught cooking, poetry, and stubbornness in equal measure. Captain Rin helped manage colony security, finding purpose in protecting rather than conquering. In the farmhouse where it all began, Do-hyun sat on the porch, watching the sunset. His daughter played in the yard, a girl of 4 years old with purple skin, silver eyes, and her father's gentle smile. She was chasing butterflies and laughing. Valora joined him, sitting close, leaning against his shoulder. Message from Korath, she said. He wants to visit. Do-hyun raised an eyebrow. In the years since Valora's return, Korath had lost much of his power. His cruelty had isolated him even within the imperial family. He says he wants to understand, Valora continued. How we built this. How we made peace between our peoples. What did you tell him? I told him he is welcome, but he has to help with the harvest. Do-hyun laughed. It was a good laugh, warm and real. I know. That is partly why I said it. They watched their daughter chase butterflies as the sun sank toward the horizon. The sky turned orange and pink and purple, colors as mixed as their family. Do you ever think about how this all started? Do-hyun asked. Sometimes. Valora smiled. A cruel prince. A barren princess. A joke meant to hurt. And now, she looked at their daughter. At the fields they had built together. At the life they had created. From nothing. Now we have everything, she said. A home. A family. A future. She kissed his cheek gently. They sent me to you as punishment. They expected me to suffer. Instead, you showed me what love really means. Do-hyun held her hand, solid and steady as always. The universe has a strange sense of humor, he said. The cruelest jokes sometimes become the greatest blessings, she agreed. Their daughter ran up to them, holding a butterfly that had landed on her finger. Her silver eyes sparkled with wonder. Look, Mama. Look, Papa. It stayed. They looked. They smiled. They held each other close. And somewhere in the galaxy, on a golden throne, an old emperor looked at a picture of his granddaughter and felt something he had not felt in decades. He felt hope. The end.